How's it going, guys? Welcome to the Talk4 Podcast. So excited to have you here today and show you this fantastic episode. Just want to say quickly that episodes like this one and all the ones before and the ones in future are made possible by people who subscribe. Hopefully, just like you. I'm going to ask you today if you can leave a subscribe, leave a follow, leave a rating, leave a like or a comment, and just support the show in the little ways that you can like that. It makes a huge difference on my end. And quickly, just want to plug as well. I've taken 30 of the best episodes of this podcast and turned them into a fantastic book that goes into 150 secrets to greatness. Each one of those 30 episodes gets crunched down into 5 of the best key takeaways from the whole talk and turns them into a fantastic book. Highly recommend you check it out. Please support the show by grabbing a copy, either a paperback or an ebook. And I can't wait to show you guys this one today. So guys, without further ado, let's get over to the episode. How's it going, guys? Welcome to episode 155 of Talk4, the Quickfire podcast, where we ask 4 great questions to unique and interesting people. Behind the mic today is your host, Skupien. That's me. Let me introduce our incredible guest for today. Dr. Luarca is going to be answering our questions today. So, Lewis, how you doing today? Welcome to the show. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here. It's going to be a great talk.
Hey, thank you, Lewis. I appreciate the opportunity. I really enjoyed talking about my 25 years of a career that not only is it pretty rare, but it was pretty amazing. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk.
It's going to be a really great talk. And I think I've been particularly excited about this one because with your experience and the things that you've done and those 25 years of fantastic career learning about all this stuff and developing it and then applying it. I've had some great conversations on the podcast with various commanders of different military units, from the Thunderbirds to the Blue Angels to aircraft carriers, and we've always gotten the experienced takes on leadership from people, but we've never really dove into the real kind of depth of the why behind it. And I'm excited to do that with you today. So let's introduce people into exactly what this career of yours looks like then. So we always have that elevator pitch, really just a minute to 2 minutes of kind of a snapshot into the life of you. So what you've been up to, what you are up to, and just kind of like a little bit of a snapshot into the day-to-day of what goes on around you. So yeah, hit us with that. And then we're going to dive into it in the backstory in a minute.
Yeah, so for the last 25 years, and even now, I fly around the United States working with different sizes of businesses, 5 million, 100 million, 300 million, 20 employees, 300 employees. I get a kick out of it. So many entrepreneurs out there with so many different businesses stirring the U.S. economy. And I got the bug 25 years ago. I basically was doing the same thing as an accountant. And over the years, I realized that not only was I really good at figuring out what's going on with an organization and what its issues are from an accounting perspective, I wanted to take a deeper dive, and I really started to gravitate towards employees and human behavior and how humans participate as employees in organizations. And I got really good at that too. And then one day, a couple years later, I thought, you know what? I think I need to write about this research, this thing that I'm learning. So I went out and got a PhD in the same field, and it's been an amazing ride ever since. Not only do I see humans differently, but when we're inside of an organization, we're not just employees. We're actually contributors, participators, and people with knowledge of those specific areas in an organization that when you roll it up, probably the best advice any leader can get inside of a business organization is their own employees. That doesn't happen a lot. So nowadays I go out there and kind of train leadership on how to listen to employees, allow them to participate, and really just get to that next level for that business organization. A lot easier than people think it is. So it's been great.
Fantastic. I can see that. And listening to some of your other podcast appearances today and yesterday as well. I mean, just so many great questions I'd love to ask you today about this. And like I said, I've heard about leadership from different walks of life, and I'm just excited to hear you're taking it today and really, really dig into it. So let's kind of start off with a bit of the backstory really then of you. So 25 years of experience as a CFO and a PhD in leadership and in organizational change. You have a unique perspective on leadership. There's no doubt about that. So can you just walk us through how your background in finance and accounting intersects with your expertise in organizational psychology and how this combination has shaped your approach to leadership development? So just a bit of backstory there and how it's kind of like laid the groundwork for what you're doing now.
Yeah, so in any business, accounting and finance is the easiest thing to look at when you look at symptoms of a business. Why isn't the business doing well? Why isn't it performing the way the ownership or leadership wants it to be? And yeah, everybody calls an accountant, and the accountant looks at all the numbers and goes, "Hey, well, you got to fix this and you got to fix that." And that's where I started. But I started to look at those factors, those variables that influence those numbers, right? And it does boil down to process. But when you think about it, particularly in today's day and age with so much AI conversation, what's going to happen to humans in 100 years, 200 years? When you think about the processes that require us to exist, there's always going to be a human to influence that process, right? Low-hanging fruit, manufacturing, right? Manufacturers build and design things and ship things that were made by a machine. That machine needs to be managed, influenced, turned on, buttons pushed by a human. So when you look at the accounting side of a business, you got to really ask yourself, at what level is that human participating? The machine is pretty basic. It turns on and it turns off. The human, though, there's so much psychology in that human that does influence their participation in the organization, which ultimately influences what the financial data is reporting. So, I started to look at it from that perspective, and really just a treasure of new data, a treasure of new information, and a great opportunity for leadership to just understand a little bit of human psychology in their leadership of the organization, to allow the organization to just have a little bit more positive influence in the growth of the organization. So, even in the last 10 years, I've actually really pushed that idea that we probably should be listening more to our employees than looking at the financial aspect of the business. Again, financial aspect of the business, no brainer. Something's wrong. Okay, how do we go back? How do we look at the root cause? How do we fix that? How do we make it better, et cetera, et cetera? And again, I've had tremendous success with that thinking and how I approach businesses. So it works, and it's been great. It really has been great.
Yeah. I think if there's one thing that we're seeing and something I've experienced firsthand as well, is that there's no better time or easier time to start a business. If you look at how difficult it was years ago versus now everything's, drag and drop and getting employees, or even some of those automation tasks. It feels like everything that we're doing business wise is kind of, it's being marketed to us now with AI and with things that are helping us kind of automate tasks that humans would have done before to almost cheapen things, or in their advertising, they say kind of make things more efficient in many ways. And I was wondering what you think about that. What's the problem with that solution to things? And if we look at, the reality of businesses right now too, there's a lot of businesses going out of business and a lot of startups that never even make it off the ground. Do you think that maybe this kind of like automation craze that we're going through right now is potentially kind of killing a lot of businesses as well? And we need kind of like that linchpin leader always, and a team of humans behind it all. Just any thoughts there on the pros and cons?
Well, I don't think humanity is at the point where AI is going to take our jobs. I'm giving it 250 years. But I do believe that AI is misunderstood, right? AI at its current level, right? ChatGPT, Google Gemini, they're tools. They truly are tools. I think what causes businesses to fail, believe it or not, a little psychology of behavior, is ego. Businesses fail because they just don't want to listen, whether they listen to me or their own employees or their attorneys. some businesses and their leadership refuse to acquiesce to the notion that, hey, wait a second, I'm the CEO, I'm the owner of this company. I should know what needs to be done to the business, when in fact, running a business is very difficult. In my 25 years, over 100 different companies, I've owned two of my own companies, one with 100 employees and one with 20 employees. Both of those businesses and all of the businesses that I've seen, it's very difficult. There's so much pressure on that leadership, on that owner, payroll taxes, workers' compensation, HR issues, happiness in the employees, uptime in equipment, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think AI is at the point right now where it's detrimental to organization success. AI is a great tool right now, but I think a lot of leadership in businesses should probably focus more on advancing their organization through the help of their own employees. And most consultants would think what I'm saying is, that's crazy, you're giving up business. Probably, but at the end of the day, my success has been because I talk to the employees. I listen to the employees, and I incorporate that in everything I do with all of the organizations I work for. Because at the end of the day, employees probably know more about the business than the owner or the leadership themselves. I've actually walked through many organizations where I asked the owner, what do you guys do here? What are you doing over there? What are you doing over there? And the owner says, I don't know. Let's get Jim over here to answer that question. So, again, I think business success and failure is related to how we use or incorporate the knowledge of our employees into business operations. It's really not AI. AI is not an issue at this point, at least from what I can see.
Okay. Where do you see this ego? Where do you see the kind of foundation of that coming from? Is that from the leaders and the organization bosses, or kind of like what level does that come from? Because when I think about ego in an organization, I typically would relate that in my own head to the boss almost being so rigid with feeling like they're in control that they're almost unwilling then to kind of give out control elsewhere to people they see as beneath them potentially, and always thinking that they're right and almost being unwilling to ego accept the fact that actually the people beneath them in their own heads could actually give them the ideas that they should be having for their own organization. So is that what you refer to when you say ego in an organization?
Yeah. So, yeah, that's exactly that. So at the baser level, all humans on this planet are egotistical. We all are. Psychologically, we're all wired the same way. We just differently, we manage it in our own way, right? So ironically, psychologically, we are snowflakes, right? Not one of us or not two of us are the same, but we're wired the same. So we're all egotistical. Now, when you throw on the success of a business, you throw on a title, maybe a salary, maybe the notion that I'm in charge of 100 people, right? I'm in charge of this product. I'm in charge. That's where that comes in. So particularly when a leader is successful at whatever they're doing, when they don't become successful, or when things don't go well, then that leader has to deal with his own thoughts about, oh my gosh, I'm not doing as well as I thought. What do I do? Interestingly enough, the last thing that person wants to do is reach out and admit things aren't going well, I need help. And then the other biggest factor that I see, a significant number of business owners in the United States, probably in the world, they are men. And as a man, I can tell you that we're full of ego, right? And then again, throw some title on there, throw some salary on there, throw a little bit of power, and then, yeah, I'm so proud to be this CEO. I'm so proud to be the owner. Nothing can go wrong, but when it does, I don't know how to reach out and ask for help. So that is the biggest hurdle that leadership has to manage. And one last thing on that note. So as much as it's difficult for leaders to acquiesce to the notion that, hey, maybe I need some help here. It's very difficult for leadership to actually admit to even their own team that something may not be wrong, because in their minds, again, that ego is so powerful. They themselves think, wait a second, I'm the CEO. I should know the answer to this problem. Oh, wait a second, I'm the owner of this company. I should know how to do this and that. When in fact, you're not really supposed to know. In the 90s, Jack Welch of GE wrote his first book called Straight from the Gut. Amazing book. Inside of that book, Jack Welch admits that he knew nothing about airplane engines or capital finance or home appliances when they appointed him to CEO of GE. So what did he do? He went to go find people who knew about those things. In that book, Jack Welch said, hey, I didn't know about that stuff, so I went to go find the people who did. Jack Welch took GE in that time period, I think it was 20 years in the early 90s, from 4 billion to 46 billion in valuation. Wow. That's amazing. And all he did was he got over himself. He realized, I don't know anything about this stuff. Let me go find the right people. So leadership in any size of organization, not only do they have this ego to manage, but they also have these internal battles with, hey, I'm the CEO. I should know this. No, you shouldn't. You should not know all of the things in your business. The one guy over there should know his department. The one person over there should know his department. Collectively, then you can manage the business. And I think a lot of leadership misses that concept of leadership. So,
do you think this is the same kind of problem dressed up differently that people suffer with sometimes in families too, where you have that kind of term almost like man of the house, or you feel like you're kind of like leader of the house or something like that in a family, as the husband or the man or something, and then that ego kind of like gives you a blind eye almost to the suggestions of the whole family around you too, and then you build up that ego, and then that kind of stops you from being able to accept criticism and stuff that's actually going to contribute to making things stronger, and then actually builds resentment. Do you think that's the same kind of thing, just in a different different dressage?
Absolutely. That's a great question, and obviously it's a different topic, but I just happen to be doing some side hustle research on depression post-COVID. And when you think about exactly what you just asked me, again, ego is that's who we are as human animals, right? We have this idea that, particularly in the United States, the man should be the provider, the man should be this, the man should be that. And who has impressed that upon the man? Society itself. If you look at the history of sociology, right? Society has groomed the human population to believe certain things. And one of those things, as I'm finding out in this other research on depression, it's difficult for men to admit, I'm not the man of the house. I don't have that great career. I'm going through a divorce, or I lost my job. And it's not just men, all of us, men, women, kids, seniors, we're all having that battle with our own ego, because that's what makes us, right? So when you take that pressures from society, and then you take that to work, and now you have a title, salary, et cetera, it's very difficult for leadership in an organization to, again, as Jack Welch's mom said in the book, you got to get over yourself. You just got to get over yourself. I cannot tell you how many times I've walked away from a client engagement because the owners can't get out of their own way, which leads me to a funny story. There's a podcast out there. I always forget the host's name. Anyway, he's interviewing Jeff Bezos, I think about 7 or 8 years ago. And halfway through the podcast, the host asks Jeff Bezos, why did you leave Amazon as the CEO? And Jeff's response was, not only did I realize I was the CEO of Amazon, But I also realized that I was the CEO of getting in my own way. And I thought, I'm sure everybody who's seen this podcast, wow, that's amazing. That is a huge revelation that leadership needs to recognize that it's okay. It's okay to struggle through your business. It's okay to struggle in your family, right? It's okay. But again, there's so much pressure in society. There's so much pressure from an organizational perspective that you're not allowed to fail. You're not allowed to have issues in the organization, et cetera, et cetera. But even somebody like Jeff Bezos and Jack Welch have said, wait a second, I don't know what I'm doing here. It's time for me to leave, or it's time for me to look for resources to help me out. So yeah, that ego thing is pretty brutal.
Yeah, I can see that. So let me give you a two-part question here then. So the first part is looking at everything you've seen, even with the people that you've worked with, or just things that you've observed externally and not necessarily worked with. But what have been some of the best examples or kind of takes on leadership you've seen in various industries, just as a whole? Was there any kind of standout textbook ones you've seen? I mean, if I could give my 2 cents in that too, I'd say that, doing 155 episodes of this podcast, the most effective and best and well-rounded leaders I've spoken to and leadership advice I feel like I've gotten thus far has been from various organizations of the military, and how people have turned, even whole boats of thousands of people around just on morale alone and just being regimented. But I just wonder what some of those correlations might be there. Is it having like that really strict chain of command that everyone has that respect for the person above them, but are not afraid to speak out? And then that comes into the leader, who then has to find a way to encourage the people who are ranked below them to speak up freely but still have the level of respect. So I'm just wondering what some of your thoughts are there on the best that you've seen in the world, and some of the lessons that maybe that you've taken or seen there that might be the biggest contributors to why they're the best.
And that's a great question, because I think it's really important. Again, that we're not supposed to know the psychology of us, right? Some of us go to college for different degrees, but it would be nice if we were at least aware, emotionally aware, a little emotional intelligence about the person next to us, right? So I've seen so many great leaders who are aware of the fact that those employees, or even in the military, those cadets, from a baser behavior, all humans want to be acknowledged. All humans want to be heard. All humans want. One of the things we want the most is, look at me. Just look at me for a second. Look at me for 5 seconds. Listen to what I have to say. I have a brain, right? I've seen a lot of leaders who actually are so aware of that, not having studied psychology. It's not about studying psychology. It's about being aware enough that when you give that person 2 seconds, 5 seconds, 5 minutes, huge. You've created a bond, a psychological bond, if you will. And I've seen some great leaders do exactly that. One company that was the research for my PhD dissertation, that leader, an amazing person. He was rigid, and he had a system in place, and he had processes, but he allowed the employees to do whatever they wanted. That company just sold 2 years ago for a phenomenal amount of money, but this guy started this thing 22 years ago with zero. And the only thing, because now I know him, the only thing I know that brought him that success is the way he treated his employees, right? Even one of my business partners, same thing. When we became partners, his idea was, Louis, you go do what it is that you do. And all I did was let the 85 employees run the company. Some people would say, oh my God, that's crazy. How would you do that? You don't really let them run the company. You listen to them. You let them participate. Let them be a part of the development of that next level management. And again, somebody like Jack Welch, or even Jeff Bezos, Michael Dell, Bill Gates, all they know how to do is let the people around them do what it is that they do. Because again, just understanding a little bit of psychology, in that all humans just want to be heard. I mean, think about this. Facebook, what does Facebook do to humanity? It's allowing everybody to opine about everything, right? One of the funniest things I realized during COVID is, according to Facebook, everybody is now a medical doctor. Everybody is now a former governor. Everybody is now a military expert, right? And all Facebook allows people to do is just, hey, I have an opinion. I have something to say, however crazy or not crazy it may be, but I just want to be heard. When you think about it, that's why Facebook is so successful. It has nothing to do with social media, SEO, whatever you call all that stuff. It's really just the psychology of being. So from a leadership perspective, all you really want to do is allow the employees to talk, and you listen and you react to their ability to probably manage the business better than you. Because again, that leader usually is alone. If that leader is on a team, then that leader is listening to a lot of different voices. Some are well qualified and some are not. So I've seen a lot of great leadership who just allow the employees to be humans.
That makes a whole lot of sense. When I try and put myself in the shoes of both perspectives of an organization and try and kind of round it up to exactly how it might feel and why there might be restrictions here, if we kind of look at some of the, correcting some of these mistakes, the common mistakes and everything, but the most I can relate to it is thinking, if I'm a new employee or I'm someone who's kind of trying to impress my leadership or do a good job at this company, or I've got this job and I'm relying on this income, and I'm paying bills at home, and inflation's tightening things up right now. I think the one word I could round that off to is just fear that speaking up and speaking my mind is going to get me yelled at, or lose my job, or lose the respect I've maybe built with my peers and stuff, or they might see me as a threat or something, or things like that. And then that's going to then might be the kind of deciding factor, which then says, that's not worth, I'm not going to mention this thing to my leaders. And then from the leader's perspective, they may really want that perspective from their, from their employees, but they might not want to stoop down to that level in their own head and think, oh, but what if they stop respecting me and they think that, they can just say whatever to me and stuff. So there's this kind of like, this little battle between fear of the employee, I think, and kind of like, as you said, ego protection of the boss, but also wanting to get what they want from the employee. So how do you start correcting this? Where do you strike the middle ground in that? How do you kind of be the CEO or the leader of an organization and connect with your employees in a way that's personable and allows for free speech, but also maintains the respect and the hierarchy that you do want to have as the leader, and then the other way around too? So as the employee, how do you approach that conversation without sparking issues with your boss, really, if they're not quite so amicable, or maybe you have this great idea and you want to present it, but maybe the boss isn't perfect and they are a little bit hostile at times? How do you do that?
Well, that's a loaded answer, right? I could answer that in 5 different ways. Number one, remember, that leader has to get over himself, right, or herself. That leader has to get over their own ego, number one. Number two, getting over that ego, that leader has to be committed, has to have the courage, and has to have the ability to communicate effectively and remain consistent with that communication. In other words, you bring on a new employee. By the way, you never get a second chance at a first impression, right? So you onboard an employee and they see a very rigid culture. That's the employee you're going to create. You bring on an employee and they see a very loosey-goosey, nothing's under control, everything's random. That's the type of employee you're going to create. That's that company culture that people talk about, right? So it is a matter of the leadership to, again, and I really do enjoy saying this a lot, you got to get over yourself, right? The business is not doing well, or the business is doing well enough, but you just hired an engineer that, based on your outdated processes, you don't know that he's an engineer, and you're just going to put him out in the shop somewhere. I've seen that happen. So you want to be able to get over yourself, be emotionally aware to understand that you yourself, as the leader, you are creating that culture, right? And the employees are watching you. A lot of people don't understand that employees are watching leadership primarily and only because those employees, humans, they have to provide for their family as well, food, water, shelter. So they're watching the organization, they're watching you as leadership, asking themselves every day, is this company good enough so I can take care of my family, right? So all the more reason to allow leadership to have some understanding of basic psychology so you can lower those bars, lower the temperature, and allow a culture, a true culture that fosters ideas, right? A true culture that doesn't just say in the handbook, hey, we appreciate you coming on board. My door is always open. Oh, you have to commit to that. If you said it, you have to commit to that. Because again, humans are very sensitive because all they need to do is make sure that their families are taken care of. And if you as a leader fail in any way after you've set the tone, you've lost that employee forever. Right? Mm-hmm. Via Michael Scott, you've created a disgruntled employee where all you really want to do is build an organization of gruntled employees, right? But again, I've always preached, I've always trained and coached leaders to just understand a little bit of psychology. And I'm not saying go to a local college and take a semester worth of psychology 101. No, you can. There's a ton of books you can read. There's a ton of videos you can watch. At the end of the day, those employees are not just a number. They're actually humans who want your business to be just as successful as you want the business to be, because they have a concern as well, right? So I think it's really important in that onboarding process to establish not only an open culture, but you got to stick to it. You can't change that culture if financials don't come out right in the second quarter, or if the supply chain hits a roadblock. You can't change that culture in the organization. It is that culture that you establish, whether it's a great culture or a terrible culture. You establish that as a leader, and you got to maintain some semblance of openness. You've got to be emotionally intelligent. You've got to be aware of what your employees are thinking, what they're seeing, and you got to be aware of just a little bit of human psychology.
I like it. Really good answer. So in aviation, we call this a hard deck. It's just that point you don't fly under there. And I guess in this question, we're going to use that term as the the kind of the reasoning behind, like, where do you not stoop below almost. So if you are an employee, I guess where's your hard deck and what you're willing to accept before it's time to walk away. And as a an employer as well, dealing with someone, you're trying to make this work and you're trying to create this culture and everything too. Because ultimately, we can talk about positive leadership all day, but you're not going to have a whole world of positive leaders. There's a lot of bad ones out there and a lot of bad organizations too. So, where do you draw the line on that too, from both ends of the spectrum? When there's, respect run out, and when do you have to walk away from it as the employee, and as an employer, when is it time to make that cut? When, your employee goes too far?
Well, I will say, again, as humans, we have one concern every day, 24/7, food, water, shelter. If I go to work into an environment that satisfies that need for me and my family, I will do whatever the company requires of me, right? So the idea that leadership, and I do hear this all the time, oh, Jim's a terrible employee. Sally doesn't do what we ask her to do. Not to divulge anything private, but I'm currently dealing with one of my clients where one of the employees is not doing a good job. Well, I did some investigation, and I literally just had this meeting on Wednesday with the president of the company. It's not that that person is doing a poor job. The organization failed in two ways. Number one, they hired the wrong person. And number two, there's no structure for that person to come on board. So this poor person is struggling because she needed a job. This poor person is struggling to muddle through the day. Nobody's training her. Nobody's coaching her. There's no procedures for what she's doing. She literally is winging it. It's not her fault. Because again, leadership would look at that and go, well, let's get rid of her. Whoa, whoa, whoa. That's not the answer, right? You have an obligation as an organization to fix that. You hired her. Nobody told you to go hire her, right? You hired her. You can't just cut her off and send her away. That's not how that works, right? So at the end of the day, we have to be able to understand that the culture we create is the culture that will come back to us in our employees, right? So we have to be able to understand that sometimes the needs of the organization go beyond what the leadership wants it to be, right? So again, we're never going to be able to create that or correct that, because our first impression on them employee was what they actually see. Therefore, that's what they actually do. And it's interesting. I see it all the time where everybody just wants to fire. Let's fire that guy. Oh, you can't do that. And the hard deck is the organization should have had its ducks in a row prior to bringing these people on.
Yeah.
Part of what I wrote in my dissertation was the importance of systems and processes. Humans, at the end of the day, if we don't have discipline, if we don't have direction, we literally will just sit there and let the clock pay us, right? We are the ones, organization leadership has to be the ones to install that hard deck. What is the hard deck? Some processes, right? Some limitations, some accountability. Some employees get nervous about that word, accountability. But at the end of the day, it's not about just the one employee. It's about the entire organization and the customers. So how do we get our product to the customer? Do we focus on this one employee, or do we establish a hard deck by way of processes, procedures, et cetera, et cetera? I think it was Leonard Nimoy in Star Trek. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, right? So we want to be able to design a hard deck of systems and processes for everybody to fit in. So A, we're hiring the right people. B, we're onboarding the right people. C, the right people are doing the right work that the business needs. I think that hard deck has got to be a hard deck of processes and procedures. That's actually what I do with a lot of my clients. And it's really funny when you look at how to design a new organization related on functional processes. I think that's, you can Google that topic. It's ubiquitous, it's everywhere. So, for leadership to come up with excuses about this employee, about that process, about this issue, I think nowadays, going back to the AI question, there's so much information on the internet. All you got to do is query it, and you will find the answer.
I like it. So if we look at red flags, maybe, because ultimately what you said is so true. We're pretty simple in what we are looking for. So, food, water, shelter, like you said, that's pretty much the bare bones of that. We can go into it a bit deeper, but that's, what it boils down to, as you said. And, as someone going into maybe like a first time job, I think maybe your priorities, as you said, you'd be willing to, sell your soul and do whatever, the company wants just to fulfill those needs initially. But, that might not make you too happy in the long run if it's something that you hate, or it's, not doing you justice, or it's, putting you in a culture that's bad. So, if you're feeling kind of pretty desperate to fulfill those needs and reach a new level in life, get a job, or, get your first job, or, start fulfilling that, that quota to eventually, maybe move out of home, or, pay off a mortgage, or whatever. What are the red flags in an organization that you'd look for, which are an instant, oh, I'm going to hate this in a few weeks or a couple of months' time when I realize that it's not worth that paycheck? Anything there that you're seeing?
Yeah, from my perspective, when I go into a business, I can look at the financial side of it. It takes me a couple of minutes to figure out what's wrong financially. But then I start looking at the human side of it, right? What's the turnover rate? What's the training policy? What's the training curriculum? Does the company have job descriptions? What's the accountability scale? Humans, we like to be managed. We like direction. We like vision. We like purpose, right? Going back to what I said earlier about depression. Depression is brought on when we feel like there's no direction, there's no purpose, right? I'm not saying people are depressed at work, but I will tell you from my own personal experience and watching other employees, it's not fun to drive 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, waste the gas, leave my family at home. It's not fun to drive to work to a place that I'm not challenged, that I'm not driven. There's no direction. There's no leadership. There's no purpose. I just clock in, I do my thing, and I leave. At some point, the human part of that employee will realize, wait a second, I have no purpose here. There's no future here. People talk down to me. I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow. It's human nature. It actually happened to me right out of college when I went to go work for the largest food company in the world. I finally made it to the mid-level corporate leadership team, and I found myself staring out the window every day. Floor to ceiling glass. I was in the corner office, the proverbial corner office, and I was bored out of my tree. One day, a consulting company came a-calling on my resume, and I was gone. I gave my 2 weeks, but it took me 2 days. I've seen that happen, right? I've seen where I'm with a client and all of a sudden Jim didn't show up today. Well, it's not about Jim's playing hooky or Jim's doing, what about Jim's job makes it so unattractive for Jim? Now, it's not Jim's problem. It's the organization leadership problem to correct that. The turnover rate. We've got to be able to go from 10 employees a year quit for a better reason, right, to maybe 1 per year because they retired, right? Is that possible? It absolutely is possible. I've driven companies to there. I've seen it happen, right? And again, it all boils down to, and I wrote this in my book, I think in the first chapter. All I'm saying is that leadership, whoever the leadership is, just understand a little bit of psychology. Again, you don't have to go to college for that. Just Google something about how humans behave, what humans are looking for. It is a red flag for me when, I see that a company's turnover rate is high, or a certain number of employees just don't show up every other day, right? Today it was Jimmy didn't show up. Tomorrow it's going to be Dave. The next day it's going to be Sally. Okay, wait a second. It's not those people. There's a pattern there. There's a message that they're trying to send. And, even in one of my largest companies that I owned with 85 employees, turnover rate before I got there was incredible. And over a 3-year period, only 2 people retired, right? I even hired 11 people. Our throughput increased by 45%. We went from a 45-day lead time to make our product with 20% return for quality defects from the customer. In about 15 months, we changed that. We went to 5-day lead time and nothing came back. Our quality went up, our efficiency went up, and we were working with the same amount of employees. How did we do that? Just listen to the employee, give them an objective, a purpose, a priority, a reason. Let them participate, listen to them, incorporate some of their ideas. If we're not doing that, then the red flags for somebody like me are pretty simple. And again, part of what I do when I meet clients, within about 2 to 3 hours, I'm out talking to employees, interviewing them, listening to them. And the employees all have the same. And when I say the employees all have the same story, company to company, it's not just in one company. Just like business owners struggle with the same stresses across the board, across industries, regardless of the size of the company. Employees struggle with the same thing. I don't know what I'm doing here. It's boring. They never listen to me. I don't know what I want to do here. Right. Yeah. So, and it's an easy fix. For somebody like me, it's an easy fix.
Do you think that maybe the employees are at fault sometimes in this too, because I'm just trying to kind of concept a few things here and I'm just thinking about it. And there's this undeniable stigma around weekends and Mondays and the work week, right? Where, people almost like groan without even knowing why at the thought of it being a Monday. And then this whole like weekend concept of, go and splurge on the weekend at the very back end, just make it through the week, get yourself to Thursday and Friday, and then it's almost over, right? There's this like undeniable stigma around people almost resenting work. And then the other side of it too, look how many degrees there are in university now and stuff, and look how many young people around even my age, I know so many people, even family members, who've got degrees in various things from university, and they're in completely different job things. And I just feel like we're in this kind of a culture where we're in a grab what you can job sort of thing. Doesn't give a, doesn't matter what you are passionate about, as a kid, doesn't matter what you even wanted to go into when you were in uni thinking about what degree you want. We're just in this kind of a thing of, especially in young folk, we're in this sort of situation where it's sort of get the job that you can, that's local, pays half decent, and just slog basically. But ultimately, that's not what you're passionate about. You're not inspired to do it. You are selling your soul a little bit just for a bit of money. And then that reflects on the organization, how well you're doing, and creates this workforce stigma where you don't enjoy your work and you actually hate the fact that you got to go into work on Monday and you are just living for a weekend. So is that all true? Is that all real? And how the hell do we even start to kind of turn that around? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because it goes back to what we talked about earlier and society, right? The sociology of human existence in large groups. So at the end of the day, society has told all generations, you got to get a job. You got to go to work because you got to pay rent and you got to buy a car. In certain cities, you cannot live without a car, right? So society pushes that on us in every generation, right? Maybe the younger generation now has different vehicles for income. But the other thing that presses against the thought that, oh my God, I got to go to work, you do, because things are expensive. They just are. I'm a lot older than I look, but I remember when I was a little kiddo, a can of Coke was 25 cents, right? Even though I didn't smoke, a pack of cigarettes was $1.10. A gallon of gas was 82, 87 cents. I didn't drive back then, but I, see it along the way. It's very expensive to exist today. Now, here's the ironical twist of that. So in graduate school, I was taught one thing. Remember, one of my professors said, if you learn anything in grad school, remember one thing. As an MBA, you're going to land a mid-level management job and you have one task: increase shareholder value, right? So when I look nowadays at the cost of everything and how all the generations have to pay into that because there's phenomenal value as a shareholder for those people who own the stock of whatever that business is, right? The employee is stuck in this quagmire of, do I not go to work and not be able to exist in, particularly in American society, or do I go to work, hate my job, and exist for the weekends in American society? So the question becomes, does that become the responsibility of leadership in an organization? I would say yes. Absolutely, yes. When, again, if you think about the psychology of what leadership should be doing, right? We want to be able to reduce turnover. We want to be able to increase the ability for us to sell our product, whatever that product is. How do I do that? Well, number one, I want to make sure I reduce my training cost. How do I reduce my training cost? I keep my employees. How do I keep my employees? Get them to participate, ask them questions, give them the wages, or at least the explanation relative to the wages of why we cannot bring you up commensurate with everybody else. I've had to have that conversation many times with a lot of client employees and a lot of employee groups. It's all about that communicating. I mentioned it earlier. You have to have the courage and the commitment and the ability to communicate. When leadership doesn't communicate, you are fostering, you are creating that environment where, yeah, People are coming to work at your company and they're watching you. The first chance they get, they're out of there. But they're watching you do nothing as a leader. So now you created a disgruntled employee because, yeah, to your question, society demands that you have to pay for your apartment. You have to go buy a house. You have to go get married, have a kid, et cetera, et cetera. All of that costs money. And it costs more if you're going to a job that you just can't stand. You don't see a future. There's no purpose. Again, so the question goes back to, is that the responsibility of leadership? Yeah, I think so. I think so because I've seen it done. I think so because I've seen it not done. And clients always ask me, how come I lose 2 or 3 employees a month? Why don't you go look in the mirror, right? And I've done it to my own company. The one company that I had in Houston, Texas, did so well over the 7 years that I owned my portion of it. We did so well. I was never in the company. I never had to worry about those tragic firefighting phone calls. All the employees that I started with in the first year were the same employees I had in the 7th year. Customers, same. Customer growth, productivity increased. Everybody had a purpose. Wages were where they should be, et cetera, et cetera. So again, does leadership have the responsibility? I think they do. To some degree, I think they do. For that leadership in that organization who's constantly wondering, how come my business is suffering? Because you're not paying attention. You're just not paying attention. And again, going back to the very beginning of our conversation here, that leader is probably already stressed out thinking, oh my gosh, I need help. I don't know how to ask for help because I'm the CEO. I'm supposed to know how to fix this. That's not true either. So,
yeah, really, really good advice there. I mean, so sound, so solid. I think if one thing's become a bit obvious in this podcast to me, it's old mindsets that are rigid and kind of like, survived almost a generation that are, unwilling to adapt to the climate and accept, new vision and, fresh ideas and new energy in organizations. That's one of the biggest holdbacks there. So, if we get into a bit of kind of like the really, really actionable stuff that people could kind of, hear, jot down on their notes and then go and apply right outside of this podcast as soon as they get done listening here. What are some of those things that you think are, instantly people need to go and have a look at, maybe a kind of a checklist of, hey, maybe they are, protected by their own ego slightly, and they need to have like a bit of a checklist and a bit of a self-reflection and then think, hey, you know what, actually, maybe I'm actually doing this, or maybe I'm the problem. Some of them kind of like light bulb moments, what could be really good to help with that for people, and just things to kind of like walk away from here and then go and apply in, as we mentioned, in business, but also maybe that's family as well.
Yeah, I think, from a business perspective, I think leaders, owners, executives, you need to understand that it's okay. The business is going to do well and it's not going to do well. And it's okay. It's not your fault, right? I cannot tell you how many times a business owner cries on my shoulders because they're so stressed out. I've done it myself. Owning and operating and managing a business is stressful. It's okay to reach out and get some help. It just is. Whether you're a business owner or whether you're struggling at home in your family, it's okay. That's the stigma that society has put on the business owner and just the average American. You're not allowed to be stressed out. You're not allowed to be anxious. You're not allowed to fail. And you can't be depressed. That's wrong. That's completely wrong. As a business owner, it's okay to be stressed out about payroll. The number one thing all businesses in the United States worry about is payroll. You know what the number 2 thing is? Payroll. Guess what the number 3 thing is? Where am I going to get the sales so I can meet my payroll, right? There's an old story out there back in the day in the 70s when the owner of FedEx was starting out. He didn't have enough money to put fuel in the trucks. I don't know if this story is true or not, but it's kind of a cool story. He had like $7,000 in the bank, and he went to Vegas and gambled enough money to put fuel into his trucks, right? Whether that's a true story or not, the guy realized, I got a problem. I got to meet this demand, whether it's fuel or payroll. And that's the thing that business owners I see more often. They don't believe that other business owners are struggling too. They are. I've seen it. That's why I've been doing this for 25 years, because everybody looks for me because something's wrong, right? The other thing I wish people would understand is you can talk to your employees. They're not just a number. Those employees are humans. Not only are they humans, you live in that house that you live as the CEO, and you drive that car and you own this company because of those people. Why wouldn't you ask them for help? Of course, you're not going to walk up to them and say, oh my gosh, please help me. But asking me for help is much more expensive than asking your employees for help. And again, at the end of the day, your employees are using the machinery, the processes, the things that you've developed in your own organizations. They're using those things. So why not ask them, how do I make this better, right? Because again, and I touched on this briefly early on, and again, consultants don't like when I say this, but as soon as I get with a client, 2 or 3 hours later, I'm out there talking to the employees, and I'm listening to them. I'm writing down their ideas. I'll give everybody this nugget. I always ask employees, and I ask myself too, whenever I help a client, if I were to buy this company tomorrow, what's the one thing I would change tomorrow? I gather those answers from 30, 40, 50, 100 employees, and I develop those into the project scope, and we tackle them one by one. And then the client says to me, oh my gosh, Louis, you did a great job. No, I didn't. I was talking to Jim and Dave and Sally. All the things we did here are those ideas. So the leadership gets to see, oh my gosh, all I got to do is listen, right? Yeah, that's all you got to do. Just walk up to your employees on Monday morning and say, hey, how's it going? Hey, listen, what would you do if you owned this company tomorrow? Some of them might be honest with you, and some of them will be like, oh, this is a trick question, I'm not going to answer. Okay, fine. But at a minimum, you got to be able to talk to your employees and listen to them. Don't hear them, listen to them, right? But yeah, that's the 2 bits of advice that I would suggest for anybody listening to this. Again, you are not alone. Again, stepping away from this topic, depression in the United States, particularly these days, anxiety, stress, we're all feeling it. We're all feeling it. But society has said over the hundreds of years, you can't talk about that. You just can't talk about that. Yes, you can. And again, as a business owner, you can talk about how stressed out you are. Payroll, 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 payroll. And then after payroll, payroll taxes. And then it's payroll taxes. And then it's workers' comp. And then it's health insurance. And then the machine went down. And then this customer's upset. You're all facing the same issues. You all are. So.
Yeah, definitely. You've clearly learned a lot over these 25 years, and I can tell you've obviously had a great time doing it, and it's been a hell of a journey that you've been on. And I think it would be remiss not to at least just ask a little bit about any reflections to the youngster. And I'm gonna tie this in the way I usually do, to kind of like a young you. So if you had kind of like a minute to speak to like a young version of you, maybe 12, 13, 14 years old, 25 years in this industry, what's your prime cut of advice that you'd prioritize to make sure it gets in the ear of a young person nowadays, do you think? And yeah, give us your take on what you would definitely want to give a young you advice on, looking forward to all this that you got done.
I'll answer that in the way my mom taught me. So when I was in high school, in the summers, I would go work with my dad. My dad worked construction. And back in the 80s, high school kid made a lot of money in the summer working construction, particularly with dad. Anyway, after high school, I thought, you know what, I'm going to continue to work with dad. And my mom said to me, don't fall in love with your paycheck. And of course, I'm 18. I'm like, whatever. I loved my paycheck. It was great. Well, one day at work, I got injured. And I go home and my mom says, I told you, don't fall in love with your paycheck. Anyway, I went to college and here I am. But the weirdo thing about that is Even to this day, I can hear my mom, don't fall in love with your paycheck. My 25 years, I didn't plan that. My new client next week, my client 3 months ago, I didn't plan any of it. It's just coming to me because, again, I believe, like my mom said, I never fell in love with my paycheck. I fell in love with what I'm doing, right? Sure, at this point in my career, I still travel. I'm going to Italy next week just because I can. But I travel around the United States and I meet the most amazing people. I meet the most amazing employees who are friends of mine to this day. How did I get here? I just let things fall into place. How did I get a PhD? Somebody suggested it to me. And I thought, wait a second, I do want to learn this other thing. So I went and got a PhD. I have 2 MBAs because I could. The opportunity was there and I fell into it. I've written a couple of books because I could, not because I felt like society was looking at me and I had to do something. It was my mom. My mom said, don't fall in love with your paycheck. So everything that I've done in 25 years, I've done it because I like it. Yes, I have to buy a house. I have to get married. I have to pay for this. I have to pay for that. But I never have gone to work in 25 years. I've never been that employee that we talked about that I woke up and thought, oh, I don't like this. I've never been that employee. I don't want to say that I've been lucky. I think it was Henry David Thoreau that said, luck is the residue of design. I designed all this. Everything that I do today, I did it 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I just fell into it because that was my mental niche, right? That's what was attractive to me at the time. And I truly, truly just fell into this. So I think for the young people, oh, and there's one last part of this. Don't get me wrong. I didn't start at 22 years old or 25 or 26. I started at 30 years old. By the time I finished high school, and I was struggling through college, by the way, I struggled through college. By the time I was 30, that's when things started to click. And society would tell the young people, oh, wait a second, you're 22, you need to get your ducks in a row. You're 23, you need to get let things fall into place. Of course, while you're waiting for things to fall into place, establish some foundational assets. And I don't mean go buy a house. Yeah, go buy a house. But when I say foundational assets, your knowledge base, your educational base, your resources, what are your resources to get the information you need to make decisions? I am a firm believer, because I'm a product of it, my 25 years just fell into my lap. Not because I got lucky, but I designed that path and it fell into my lap when it was supposed to fall into my lap. Again, I didn't finish college until I was 27 years old. And I don't feel like anything clicked until I was 30. Don't get me wrong, I had plenty of influences around me. My friends are attorneys, police officers, business owners. My brother's a doctor. So, it's really interesting that I allowed things to just fall into place. Again, society will put pressure on you, right? Even my own mom was like, hey, you're 25, what are you doing? Don't worry, working on something, right? But yeah, it's easy for me to say now at this age, at this point in my career, it was super easy. It wasn't, but I never stressed out about going to work to a place that I didn't want to be, right? Even today, if I meet a client that I just don't like, I get to terminate the client, which, by the way, in the last 4 years, I've terminated 3 clients on my own. Hey, thanks, Mr. Client. This isn't working out. It's not in my best interest. It's not in your best interest. So again, just for the young people out there, just let it happen.
Yeah.
Some of my high school friends that I still see to this day, they can't believe I have a PhD. And you know what? Sometimes I can't believe it either. But I think it's really important to just let things come to you in their own time. Yeah. That's what I did.
I really like that. And actually, when you were talking about that too, there was a quote from a former guest, Taylor Heister, who it gave me this quote, and it just I don't know, there's that side of it too that I really like as well. I'm just going to read it out now for just the people listening in, so they just have it in their heads as well. But there will probably be one or two moments in your life when someone asks you to do something great, and it would be a real shame if you weren't prepared for that moment. And I think that's a nice little lead out of there too, just to think about, let things, yeah, 100%, you got to let things come to you. But as you said there so rightly, what you did today, the success of today, you can thank you 5 years ago or 10 years ago for doing that. And you know what? I can only imagine, we've had an hour here today. I can only imagine how much more of this great stuff is in the book as well. So, if we kind of go out into a bit of a shameless plug now, really, and just kind of promote everything of yours so we can kind of learn a bit more, pick up some more info and stuff, or maybe even go into kind of like consulting if someone really resonated with you today and wants to kind of, get a bit more out of it and cater it to them. What services you provide in, where can we find it? Book and any essential reading material that we got to go and go to after this. So yeah, shameless plug away, and then we'll wrap it up in a minute.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, so the easy way is just Google my name, Louis Luarca, PhD. I think I'm the first 5 pages of that. But you can also go to louisluarcaphd.com. You can go to Amazon, type in my name, Louis Luarca, PhD. My books will come up. This last book that I wrote is a combination of my 25 years plus my PhD research. And I was inspired to write this book. I was in Los Angeles about 5 years ago, and I was at a restaurant by myself, and it was lunchtime, and these employees from this local company came by. There was 5 employees. They sat in the booth next to me. And all they did the whole time they were sitting there is complain about their boss and the company they work for and blah, blah, blah. And I was thinking, why don't they just quit? Or what's wrong with that organization that they need to know this, And then I came up with the title of that book right then and there in that moment. And then I wrote the book. So the title of the book is, Do Employees Really Like Working Here? And that's the fallacy of leadership. Leadership believes all my 100 employees, my 20 employees, my 300, they love working here. I would say not, right? So Google that book. You can go to amazon.com, type in my name. You'll see that book, Do Employees Like Working Here? There's 2 different things that I do for different companies. One is teach and coach on the leadership side. And then I also do a lot of accounting and finance from a CFO perspective. And they both intertwine. The clients don't realize that they're getting 2 for 1, right? So it's, again, as I developed that over the years, it's just been a great, fantastic ride that, the clients that I'm with now, the clients that I've had, even the clients that I've terminated, I know that there's enough left behind for them to move forward. And again, some of these companies, they eventually sell for higher than they were valued at originally. Some of these companies are now in the next generation of ownership. Some of these companies just close down and the owners live in somewhere in Hawaii or something, because that is the goal, right? That is the ultimate goal. Give it to your kids, retire, or sell it, right? So there's a lot of opportunity to get those companies to that next level. Yeah, if you just Google me, I'll show up there. You might even see one of my videos. So
fantastic. You know what, Louis, I just want to say, I've really, really enjoyed this one. It was a great deep dive into the psychology behind it. It was great to hear a little bit about your backstory too. And I think one of the things I really appreciate as well is that you're someone who, maybe didn't have that direct vision for where you wanted to go, but you put one foot in front of the other and you went from, struggling in college to get into where you are now, doing such impactful high-end work. And I think that's a great story that a lot of people are going to connect to. And, people, especially at that age where you were when you were going through all that, I think we can appreciate that sometimes in the 20s, it's hard to understand where you're going with everything. But I think it's one of those things where it's just a case of sometimes you got to put one foot in front of the other, feel your way through things, try a load of different things as well. and not be regimented to what society is telling you to do, and be flexible to let life kind of throw you down the path it's got in store for you. So I feel like we hit a lot of great points in this convo, and I just want to say a massive thank you to you, and that it's just been an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate you.
Well, likewise, thank you for having me. I hope I helped at least one person out there. So thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. And thank you guys for listening. This was episode 155. If you'd like to listen to the past episodes, go and have a look at the channel. And if you'd like to listen in for the future ones too, make sure you hit that subscribe button and spread some love by leaving a like and a comment. And of course, go into the description and check out the links as well for the book and the website. See you in the next one. Cheers.